What happens when you're caught between two worlds? One where you're a human and the other where you're a monster. Can a half-ghoul really maintain his humanity? Hey y'all, I'm Liv La Nina, and today we're gonna find out the answer to that question. I am going to be reviewing season 1 of Tokyo Ghoul, which is a dark and intense fantasy around ghouls. So Tokyo Ghoul as a whole series is a very dark and intense ride, but it really begs the question, what will you do to survive? So Tokyo Ghoul follows Kaneki, who is a college student who meets a young lady named Rise. You know, he thinks they hit it off well, and she actually bites him. He finds out that she's a ghoul, and then he gets injured, and he's actually implanted with some of her organs, which turns him into a half-ghoul. So that's a lot to be sprung on one person, to wake up and find out that you're not even the same biologically as you were the day before. So we get into a wild ride following the life of Kaneki as he adjusts to finding his place in the world. So essentially, season 1, the major conflict is between the CCG, which is an organization that hunts for ghouls, and we're introduced to the Agiti tree, which kidnaps Kaneki at the conclusion of season 1. So, jumping right into the ratings, how does this hold up against other dark fantasy animes that I've watched and reviewed? Well, stay tuned and let's find out. And if you're not already, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And most importantly, subscribe. Question 1. How effectively is gore and terror used to enhance the story? This one comes out strong with a 9. So there's a bit of a buildup. I will say that it's not everything at once. But even on the first episode, when we see Kaneki get bitten by Rise, it's a little bit of terror, it's a little bit of gore, but it definitely builds. And I will say there are some terrifying scenes in Tokyo Ghoul. One of the main ones is when he actually gets kidnapped, right? Like right before he gets kidnapped, and then what happens to him after he gets kidnapped. So you definitely start to connect with the characters more, and then you start getting more terror, more gore. So that was very well done. How much free will does the main character have, and how do they handle external influence? A 10. Yes, Kaneki gets a 10 because I think that even though he definitely struggles with identity issues once he turns, he still maintains his free will, and he still has his ideals, the kind of person that he wants to be, who he doesn't want to be, and he holds true to that, and he doesn't get put in a box to where, you know, hey, you're half ghoul now, so you have to do this. He still maintains, you know, I am Kaneki. I've been Kaneki forever. This is how I want to live my life. And he realizes that he's not alone as well. So he's receptive to the advice that he gets at the coffee shop that he works at, Otaku. How compelling is the antagonist character and motivation? This one I give a 5, right? So I rank this one lower just starting out because the antagonists really aren't that well defined yet, not in the grand scheme of things. So for season 1, I would say the antagonist is definitely CCG, Rise, and Yamori. And Yamori is actually the one who kidnaps Kaneki from the Agiti tree. And we don't necessarily learn the complexity behind kind of their motivations for these characters in season 1. You know, early on, we don't really get that. However, Amon from CCG, he develops a more personal interest in defeating ghouls when his partner, Mado, is killed by ghouls. So we kind of start to see things, but we still got a while to go. How morally complex are the characters and their choices? Another 10. So we see the world from both perspectives, from the perspective of humans who fear ghouls and ghouls who feed on humans. Because in order to survive, ghouls have to eat humans. But there are some ghouls who kill just to kill. There are some who kill for food. And there are some who actually don't kill at all. They get their nutrition from people who are already deceased. So there's different levels to it. And we see how, as a whole, ghouls get treated one way by, humans. And we kind of see, different dynamics of that. And then especially with Kaneki being half human, half ghoul, that's a whole nother layer of complexity. So it's easy to see where the dilemmas lie for both sides. How unpredictable is the plot? This one I gave it a 7. There's some predictability in the plot, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So some things we kind of predict, but there were some things that I did not see coming for sure. So, So for the final rankings, we have 9, 10, 5, 10, and 7, which gives us 41. And 41 out of 50 gives us an 8.2, which is awesome, 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 awesome. And there's still room to go up. Just checking in. If you're still watching, make sure you subscribe and leave me a comment on how you feel this rating compares if you've seen this anime just for season 1. And if you're not convinced if you should watch it, keep listening and find out what I really loved about it and things that are going to get better as the show goes on. So as always, no matter how much I like a show, there are always going to be things that I dislike. And for Tokyo Ghoul season 1, I will say the pacing. So this show actually it starts off with a little bit of excitement, but overall it's a slow start. So there is a little bit of a slow burn. There is a little bit of buildup around Kaneki and his identity issues. That's a thing for a good little bit. So you just have to have a little patience for Tokyo Ghoul. The second thing is there's too many bad guys. Okay, so remember in the rankings with the antagonist, I gave that a 5. There's too many of them. There's just like way too many of them. And there are a lot of people doing similar things. So we don't really get like concrete answers for that and clarity until later in the show. From outside research, because again, I do my ratings specifically on the anime, not the mangas. But from my research, this is an anime that was not adapted well from the manga, and there's a lot of things that are explained in the manga that are not in the anime. So I do feel like that's apparent me rewatching this, because I watched this a few years ago, but rewatching it, there was definitely things that I was like, where did this come from? Who are these people? And it just wasn't explained well. So there's some things that might explain some of the gaps and answer some of the questions that's left out in the show. One other small thing that I dislike is I'm a firm believer in you should not have to read the manga to know what's going on. So in any kind of adaptation of written material, from written to, to multimedia, so from book to film, from manga to anime, you can't get all of that stuff in there, right? That's just not possible. Those movies would be hours and hours long. However, I feel like you should still know enough to get the story. And I feel like the manga not adapting as well into the anime is another drawback for me, because I just feel like the questions that needed to be answered in the anime. As far as things that I did like, so I really liked the animation style. It was dark and gritty, and Tokyo Ghoul's not that old, but it definitely had that grit to it, and it was what it needed to be for the type of anime that it is. I loved, one of my favorite quotes from the show was the quote, when Kaneki was going through his identity crisis, and he was like, I don't have a place, anywhere. And, he was told, you're the only person who has a place in both worlds, human and ghoul. So I thought that was very nice touch. So the gore, I like gore. If you saw my bloodthirsty anime review, you will know that I love gore. But this one, I liked how it was done. So it is gory, but it doesn't just hit you all at once. It's definitely a buildup. It's a slow burn, like I've said this, action-wise and gore-wise. And I will say one of the hard to watch scenes for me, at least, was right before Kaneki got kidnapped. That one was a tough one to watch. Okay, that one was a little more brutal than, you know, I expected it to be, of course. And then something else that I liked is that even though it's like a supernatural kind of anime, which is done a lot, I love the perspective of seeing things from both sides and having someone who's right in the middle, who's, you know, half ghoul, half human. And he didn't even choose this. You know, this is something that was sprung on him. He lived his whole life as a human and one day became half and half, you know, so we get to see the world differently. We start to see, you know, can we root for a ghoul, you know, or are we supposed to root for the humans? Like, you know, you get that kind of moral complexity. All in all, Tokyo Ghoul was for sure a great watch. Again, this is just season 1, so I'll be back with season 2 and season 3. I watched it on Hulu. I'm sure it's on many other platforms, but that's where I watched it. If you are into dark fantasy, if you're into supernatural elements, if you like gore, this is definitely a good one. But I want to know, what did you think? You know, if you've seen it or if you read the manga, did you enjoy it as much as I did, more or less? So tell me your thoughts. As always, I welcome you to comment on the video. If you have any suggestions for any animes that you would like me to watch and review, please leave them in the comments below as well. And if you're not already, hit that button to subscribe, and I will see you guys next week.